Well, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome back to part two of our encounter service. And it was good to see everybody smiling face here today. Those are online. It's great. And but I would love for you all to go with me over to Genesis chapter 37. You know, earlier I had prayed that prayer. It's been kind of resonating in me because of this message. And so I have a question for you. Is there any retirement in Yahweh?
No.
Are you sure you can't just go to a certain point and then you say I'm retired and go live on the beach or a golf course or a ski slope?
Not from him.
Or wherever your dream retirement location is. Is that a God thing? You know what always amazes me is that there are pastors out there and they hit retirement age and they actually retire. They retire from being a pastor.
But yet then some of them come back. There's a lot of those pastors.
Some come back and they become substitute pastors. That's very true. And yet some they just retire, and they don't do anything after that. Does that make sense to you?
No.
But it happens and they do it, and for whatever reason. But anyway, but in all reality, okay. So here we have in Genesis 37:1. And it reads, Yaakov or Jacob settled in the land where his father was a sojourner in the land of Canaan or Canaan. These are the generations of Yaakov or Jacob. Okay. Another way that you could say this is, and Jacob retired in the land where his father was a sojourner. Okay, do you see something wrong here? Do you see an element? Okay, bear with me because we're going to dig into this a little bit more. There's a difference between Jacob being a one who settled and his fathers that were sojourners. What does sojourn mean?
They're living in a place that's not theirs.
It's temporary.
Traveling.
Right? It's temporary.
Like they're living in a sukkah. Yeah.
Okay, so Jacob
They're nesting.
settled. Can y'all see this? Settle. Jacob settled. The Hebrew word for that, by the way, is vayeshev. We talked about that earlier. Okay. But in the land where his father was a sojourner,
Or in some Bibles it says stranger.
Stranger, that's right. The Hebrew word is magur. So Jacob settled in the land where his father was a sojourner. Jacob settled, but his father, who was born in the land and who could never leave the land, was a sojourner. Jacob left the land and came back, and he settled. Okay, just know the emphasis there, right? So he returned to the same land as his father. And let's look at something in Genesis 36:2. It says Esau, because we're going to do some comparisons. And Rashi actually compares that verse 37:1 with Genesis 36:2, which was last week. Okay, Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan. Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all the persons of his household, his cattle and all his animals, and all his goods, which he gained in the land of Canaan, and went to a country away from the presence of his brother Jacob. Verse 8, it says, and Esau settled via Shev. So Esau settled. Esau settled in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. And these are the generations told of Esau. Now there is something very interesting because in Genesis 37:1, and Jacob settled in the land where his father was a sojourner in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. What's it say back in chapter 36? And Esau settled in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. And these are the generations of Esau. Y'all see some similarities going on here. So Jacob settled, Esau settled, or Esau settled in Edom. Jacob, or Mount Seir, same location. And we see this contrast. And then we see Jacob's generations. We see Esau's generations. You see the parallels. Y'all with me? Okay. In Genesis 37:1, it links Jacob, to his father Isaac, Esau. On the contrary, we see that Esau has chosen to leave the land of Canaan since he's not part of the covenantal promise. So do you see the concept? Isaac could not leave because he was offered. He is part of the covenantal promise. Jacob had to leave, he had to flee, but he returned, and that's where he settled. Covenantal promise. The land could not hold both of them together. So going on, Esau was chosen to leave the land of Canaan since he was not part of the covenantal promise and settle via Shev in Edom. Not to be missed, however, is that this is from Rashi. Not to miss, however, is that Yaakov's father, Jacob's father, was a sojourner, a magur, in the land of Canaan. So Jacob had intentions of settling in the land where his father was a sojourner. But his father could never leave. His father still was a sojourner in the land that he couldn't leave, but Jacob had a desire to settle there. Okay? It would appear that Jacob was attempting to act in a manner that was opposite of the way that his father had lived life. Jacob's desire for a settled lifestyle is shattered by the pain of losing his beloved Joseph. Okay. Now, before we go back to the sojourn question here and the settling question, something about the New Testament or the Brit Hadashah tells us that in order for us to grow and mature, it is only completed as a result of living through trials. If you call yourself a believer and you're looking for a trialless life, then either you're deceived or not a believer.
Right.
Think about that. Romans 5:3. 3-5. We also glory in tribulations. What? Wait a minute. Is that in the word? We glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. Now, hope does not disappoint because the love of Yah has been poured out in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who is given to us. Those are those verses we don't like to hear. No, we like the pie in the sky, don't we?
It's not pie in the sky, people.
I've not ever experienced pie in the sky.
Not every day.
Yeah, okay. Going on, it says in James 1:2, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, verse 4, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing.
Yep.
So, Jacob wanted to settle. Did he get to settle?
No. Not for long.
He continued to have trials. So think about this later on. Jacob does mature because even though at the beginning it says he settled, at the end he calls himself a sojourner. Okay, so jump forward to Genesis 47:8 with me. This is the mature Jacob, Yaakov. Pharaoh said, this is Genesis 47:8 and 9. Pharaoh said to Yaakov, to Jacob, how old are you? I was like, man, is that like, you really look old. You really look old. How old really? Women, would you like someone to, how old are you?
Don't even ask.
How
Well,
old-
it may not be looks, it may be the way he carries himself.
Could be. Could
He
be.
carries himself with maturity.
He does. That could be very true. Thank you, Tammy. She said, if you didn't hear her, she said, he could be carrying himself with maturity. And going on, verse 9, and Yaakov said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my sojourn, my magur, are 130 years. Few and bad have been the days of the years of my life. Few and bad have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojourns. So now Jacob is a lot older. He thought he was old when he came back with all of his family, and he wanted to settle. He wanted to nest. He's tired of the running, the living, all of that. I got my sons, they can run my flocks. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy life. Don't I deserve a retirement? Don't I deserve that to be able to live? I've been through so much. I even survived Esau's kiss. And here I am. It's all good. Until my sons went out and killed those guys at Shechem. And then all of the 10 cities around them made war with us, and we had to go fight them. I'm tired of these trials and these tribulations. And he says, in Genesis 47, but I've not attained the days of their sojourns, the life of my fathers. So, okay, so do you think Yaakov is being really negative here? I mean, after all, he's like, I really wanted to settle. Now I've just had to be a sojourner, and it's been a hard, long life. Is he saying that? Or has he come to accept these trials and difficulties because in the maturity of life, he begins to realize that the trials and the tribulations actually are to bring us to a certain point that God wants to live in. So, because the trials and the difficulties are the tool that Yahweh wants to bring him to completion. Complete in our faith, mature in our faith. Hebrews tells us about all the patriarchs, and it says that they were sojourners. Now, tell me something. Why is it in America, and I won't just say America, but think about all the different places in the world. It is the culture of today that says nest. Right?
Yeah.
Women don't, you know about nesting. You don't want to be moving all the time, getting up, packing up, moving to a new place, unpacking, and then when you find out you get transferred again. Or it's like, well, this house wasn't quite where we wanted it to be, and now we're ready to get the next house, so let's go get another house. Who likes doing that? You know, for us, when Sandy and I got married, we lived in the house that I had originally purchased, and we lived there a lot of years. How many years? I think 10 years. And then we picked up, and then we moved in the house we live in now. It's been another 17 years, going on 18 years. 18, yeah, somewhere like that. It's been a while. And you know what? I don't want to move. It's nice. It's nice to live in one spot. Because before we got married, I probably moved from the time that I left college to the time that we got married, and I moved to Amarillo, Texas. In Amarillo, I moved, that's my third time to move in Amarillo. I moved here, lived in one place, moved to the house, then moved to the house we're living in right now. I mean, that's 3 times in Amarillo. But I must have moved 12 or 15 times. Do you know how many times I moved before I moved to Amarillo? At least 8 to 10 times growing up. That's a lot of moves.
You were a gypsy.
Or maybe I'm Hebrew because I've been a sojourner. Can y'all relate to who's lived in the same place in the same house where you lived in for all of your life and you're still living there? You raised there and now you still live in that same house. Do you realize how rare that is? Extremely rare. All right. Okay, Hebrews 11:8 says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Yaakov, with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise, dwelling in tents. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Hebrews 11:13 says, confess that they were strangers and sojourners on the earth. But wait a minute, this is the land of promise. But they are sojourners, strangers on the earth. So, what is it telling us here? It's telling us that there's a benefit of not being too settled. Hebrews 11:16. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore, Elohim, Yah, is not ashamed to be called their Elohim, for he has prepared a city for them. So let's go back and look at sojourning. What does sojourning apply or imply? It implies walking. We're walking. Was there that movie about tourists? You know, tourists, you ever go to a place like a museum or something and you're in a little tour and you're going through it, you got a little tour guide that's taking you, and you get the tour guide's got to keep you moving because they got another tour right behind you, so they got to keep going. We're walking. It speaks of mobility. Think about Terry and her knee, removing the ability to be mobile. That's rough. It's rough. You ever have something go wrong on your foot and your ankle, twist your ankle, your knee or your hip. I'm telling you, everything's affected by it. And it's just one part of your body. It speaks about progress. And it speaks about growth. Is growth easy?
No.
Why do we have this thing called growing pains?
Yeah.
Growing pains. It's because it's not easy, but in the end, it represents and it shows maturity. It shows completion. So we have that. Now here's the next thing. What is the opposite or the danger of a settled lifestyle? Well, if these represent, and we're actually talking about spirituality, being able to walk in the Spirit, to be mobile in the Spirit, progress in the Spirit, to grow in the Spirit, then the opposite would be true, and we're talking about spiritual paralysis. Paralysis. You can figure out my handwriting. Spiritual paralysis. And have you ever heard of spiritual paralysis, being spiritually paralyzed? In other words, you can't move. You've been in the same place that you've been in your spiritual walk with y'all for the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
Same place, walking around that same mountain, not growing, not moving. It is one who is stagnant.
Yeah.
Stagnant. So if you're stagnant in the faith, it is like something that becomes putrid. You had stuff coming in, nothing going out. You go to a stagnant pond, what's it look like?
Yuck.
Especially if it's on the downside of a feedlot. Okay? It's kind of stagnant. It's putrid. It stinks. There's stuff growing on it, right? That shouldn't be growing on it. You wonder what those fuzzies are? Well, that's what happens to our spiritual walk if we become stagnant. If we're still living in the same place we were 5 years ago because something happened. And we didn't like what happened. We didn't get our way. God didn't answer our prayer. And so therefore, I'm bitter at God. I'm resentful at God. And therefore, I'm going to hold it against him. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hold it against him, and I'm not going to grow. Wait a minute. Think about the insanity of that. I didn't get my way, so I ignore God. Therefore, when I ignore God, I stink. Spiritually.
Yep.
And I'm going to go on and live my way the way I want to live it because I didn't get my way. So we settled. We settled for holding our own position. And where y'all wanted us to be, we haven't arrived there yet because we settled.
That's right.
We
Hold on.
nested.
Hold on.
We nested.
We're going to get there.
It has to do with an obsession with security. Why? Because it doesn't feel right. Because of whatever that thing was that caused me to stop. So now it just doesn't feel right because it's unsettling to go any further, to press through it, to work through it, to work through the trial, to work through the tribulation. And therefore we're going to set up processes by which we can cope with. But every one of those mechanisms that we use to cope with are fault. They have faults in them. And there's really insecurity because in the settling.
Yeah.
Genesis 5:24 says, and Enoch walked with Elohim, and he was not, for Elohim took him. Genesis 6:9 says, Noah was a just man, perfect, tamim, perfect, mature. In his generations, Noah walked with Elohim. Genesis 17:1 says, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai, walk before me and be blameless. Paul, Shaul encourages us in our spiritual walk. And by the way, I just want to break a myth. His name was still Shaul. Okay? Even though we call him Paul, his name was still Shaul. Just because he got saved, they put a Greek name on him because the translation of the Greek. Okay, just so we know. Okay, his name is Shaul, but his name out of the Greek comes Paul. Same guy. He didn't give up his old name. It was still Shaul. When they saw him and he went back to Jerusalem, they called him Shaul. Okay, just so you know. When he showed up at the different synagogues, he said, my name's Shaul. It's just that we have these translation issues that go in. They call him Paul. Okay, I want to break that myth. If anybody's listening that he's like, you always thought, well, he got a name change because he got saved. No, guys, that's not really what it is. Okay, so Shaul encourages us in our spiritual walk by saying this in Romans 8:1. There is therefore, what's the therefore? Now, no condemnation to those who are in Yeshua the Messiah, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. So, we see, Enoch walked with Elohim, and Noah walked with Elohim. El Shaddai said to Abram, walk before me. And now Paul says that there's no condemnation to those who are in Yeshua the Messiah, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. So we don't want to walk in the flesh, or in other words, we don't want to be settled, but rather walk according to the Spirit. Because when we're walking to the Spirit, guess what's going to happen? We're going to be walking, we're going to be mobile, we're going to progress, we're going to grow, we're going to mature. We're going to get off the milk and we're going to get into the meat. That's how our desire is. 2 Corinthians 5:7. For we walk by faith. You notice that? Not by sight. We walk by faith, not by sight.
Yep.
No, who wrote the letter to the Corinthians? Paul, Shaul, right? So he said, walk. He said, we're not going to settle
That's right.
faith by faith. We're not settled by faith. We walk by faith. We are sojourners. We're walking. Okay, moving on. Matthew 11:28. Talking about Yeshua. Think about this. When we're a new believer, when we're an old believer, no, it doesn't matter what type of believer we are, we're told by Yeshua to take on his yoke. Because why? When you have a mature ox coupled with a not so mature ox, guess what? The mature ox is going to
Overtake.
teach the younger one how to walk. That's why Yeshua might say this, and it might be saying this in 11:28, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So when we're walking with Yeshua, we are in the process of being a sojourner. We're walking with him. Therefore, we find rest. Did you know that we actually rest when we walk? We don't find rest if we settle. Settle. Ladies, has this thought ever gone through your mind when you've been married to the same man for 20 years or 30 years or 50 years and you say, did I settle? Did I settle? That's a thought. That's a shower thought for you today. Okay, Yeshua promises us rest for ourselves, for our souls, rest for our souls. But there's no promise for rest for our souls in a settled life. But actually, it seems like the opposite is true according to Scripture. Luke 9:23. Then he said to them all, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. 1 Peter 1:6 says this. Now for a little while, if need be, you have, take up your cross. Now, the implication of the cross, taking up your cross daily, your stake, your tree, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. Just understand we get the word picture, right? Does that imply an easy life?
No.
Or does it imply trials?
Trials.
Okay.
You're going to endure a lot that he did.
Okay, 1 Peter 1:6 says, now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials. Now, who in this room is without trials? Am I the only one? I didn't raise my hand for that. I was just kidding. Okay, we have issues. It doesn't matter if we're young or we're old. We're dealing with stuff. We're always dealing with stuff. Okay, so the question is to settle or to sojourn. And I'm going to tell you, does not settling sound inviting? Are you happy where you live? Do you want to live your life out forever in that same place?
No. Well,
I don't like to move. Sandy and I have talked about that. Moving. Well, what would it mean? Live in the country as opposed to living in the city, that type of thing. What would that mean? It would really mean a lot of work. We accumulated a lot of stuff when we moved into this house. And when you start to prep, you accumulate even more stuff. Okay? So, and you think about food and all the different things, all that rainy day type of stuff you store up for, right? Well, it kind of piles up. It sounds inviting, but what do we miss? if we avoid the challenges of life, like, who loves challenges? All right, think about that. I played sports in high school. I love sports. I love getting out there and competing. I don't like those challenges. This guy, I'm going to beat that guy in the next race. You know, challenges. When we played, our volleyball team won 3 years in a row the International School Sports Tournament. We were number one in all of Europe.
Wow.
Egypt would come up and play. And guess what? Egypt was good. Cairo, the International School of Cairo, my goodness. They had some guys in there that could serve like super hard. You can't, when that ball would come down, if you didn't quite hit that thing just right, man, it was gone. I mean, we're seriously hard serves. They were them and the International School of London. Those two schools were our biggest competition. We had to overcome them. We had to fight hard. There was a challenge to beat them. Would we rather have them not in our bracket? Oh yeah. But we would have eventually faced them in the finals. So we had to play them. And we won.
All right.
Why? Because we had to persevere. Challenges in life allowed us to arise to the occasion. Do you realize, Jack would probably understand this, if you're playing in a group, in a band, and you've got people that play better than you, what does it do to your playing, your skills? It elevates them. It challenges you to go better. But just because you hear them, there's an inspiration that goes beyond your ability, your current ability. It just lifts you up. It does. Here's a story. Once there was an old lady sipping her coffee in the restaurant of a theater long before the curtain had gone up on the first act of the play. The waiter asked her curiously why she hadn't taken her seat inside the theater. She replied to him, "Oh no, it's much too crowded and noisy in there now. Once they all come out, that's when I go in. Then I can have as many seats to myself as I like." Okay, so going on with the thought, and this actually comes from Rabbi Yerucham Leibovitz. Very interesting though, he brings out. We tend to think that the purpose of life is those endless sunny summer days. Days when you can't see a cloud and everything in life seems perfect. And when the rain falls into our lives, as it does to us all, well, that's something to be endured until the clouds clear. Who has that mindset, right? We all have that mindset. We put up with hardship thinking that it's just a painful intermission, and when it comes, we will get back to the real purpose of life. The sunny days, right? The reverse is really the case. Life is all about the rain and the storms and our striving to overcome them. For in this way, we elevate ourselves spiritually and fulfill the purpose that we were meant for. Those sunny days are so we can gather our strength and thus derive the maximum from facing life's challenges. Jacob learned that it was considered improper for him to place his focus on serenity, for in life, the play's the thing, not the intermission.
That's good.
The play is the thing, not the intermission. So now, this whole story about Joseph, it coincides with Hanukkah. There's a Hanukkah theme in this. So we talk about Jacob. Is he gonna? He finds out that life is about the sojourning and not the settling. So what about Joseph as it coincides with Hanukkah? So what is the connection between these two stories? And it seems like Joseph and Jacob, is there anything that really relates to this? And how does this relate to Hanukkah? So first off, the name Hanukkah has two meanings. First and foremost, it means dedication. So we're in the season of Hanukkah. first night's tomorrow that we're going to celebrate. So it means dedication. And in 165 BCE, the temple was purified and rededicated to the service of Yahweh after many years of pagan defilement. So, rededication. It's talking about the purification of the temple. That's the process there. This is what it's a reminder of. Hanukkah reminds us of this dedication after defilement. What a time to dedicate our lives or rededicate our lives. Has our temple been defiled? Another meaning, however, is worth looking at, and let me erase the board. And let's get it to the next one. Hanu. Hanu is the word. Hanu. Okay? That's where we get Hanukkah. Hanu means they rested. Wait a minute. We just talked about we want to be sojourners and not settlers. Okay, we're going to get there. So it means they rested, and ka. Are y'all staying with me?
Yes.
Okay. And ka means it's the Hebrew letters with the kaf and the hay. The kaf and the hay it means 25th. They rested the 25th. In other words, not the 25th of December. Okay, I know what the Greeks are thinking. All right? Okay, it's not the 25th of December, it's the 25th of Kislev. Okay, the month of Kislev begins on the 25th of Kislev. So, Hanukkah was a rest, or shall we look at it this way? It was a reprieve between battles. It was a reprieve between battles. What happened? They had to battle the Greeks in order to take back the temple, because there had been a lot of years. Do you realize this? That the Jewish people that were living in the land at the time, that there were those that tried to remain pure and to continue to walk after the traditions of our fathers.
Yes.
What are those traditions? It's keeping the feast days, it's eating clean, it's circumcision, it's all of those different things, that walking scripturally according to the scriptures. Yet they were prevented from doing so. They were taking pigs and putting them on the altar. They defiled the altar. In other words, so at a certain point in time, or when they came in and they took back the temple, they had to destroy that altar because it had pig's blood in it. You can't use those stones again. But what are you going to use those stones for? Because if it's been used for the holy, you can't just go throw them in the trash. So they have to just simply take those stones and set them aside. It's the same stones that when they brought the woman caught in the act of adultery to Yeshua, where was Yeshua? Probably up at the temple area. And they came and said, we caught this woman in the act of adultery. What are you going to do? And they took up stones. Well, what were the stones? Well, you think about the temple area, it's going to be all cleaned up, but they would have had to take that debris because they can't leave the temple area. It's holy. It's been set aside for holy purposes. You can't throw it in the trash. So the stones that were available were the stones that were defiled.
Huh.
But going back to this, physically, the Jews overpowered the Greeks. They were able to rededicate the temple,
That's
and they settled for a moment. like Jacob, you get done with one conflict, you get a break, and it goes on, and there's another battle, another spiritual battle, another thing that grabs our attention, another challenge in our life, and then we get a break. So, Jacob, he wasn't able to settle. He wanted to settle by a chef. But instead, he had to sojourn. You can list them all out. Jacob, his children were fighting against each other. They caused a war with the allies of Shechem. He lost his son, Joseph. He thought was murdered, destroyed by a wild animal, right? Different things. Then there was this famine in the land. And he had to figure out how to get food for all of his family and all of his flocks. Okay, think about all of those different things that he had to face. Jacob knew how to deal with the attacks of Esau and Laban, but he was at a loss to deal with his own family. Think about this. Is it easier to go and fight the battles at work than it is to deal with the family issues at home? If you are in that same boat, you're normal, and you're following after the footsteps of Jacob. But how many think that it's worth fighting for with your family?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth fighting for.
In the end, yeah.
It's tough. It's a battle. And that's why Hanukkah repeats the Jacob story. They physically battled against the Greeks. Then there were the spiritual battles. Think about after they cleaned up the temple. And then think about all of those Hellenized Jews that said, oh, we left that old way of life. We like the Greek way of life. And they remained in the land. In the New Testament, it talks about that there were all these Hellenized Jews. The Greek thinking Jews. They were all still in Jerusalem. The early church had to deal with them. The early congregation, the early assembly had to deal with the gathering of these people. So in First Maccabees 2:27 and 28, said there's a statement that was made. Whoever is zealous for the Torah and maintains the covenant, let him follow me. So the secular Jews invited the Greek influence into Jerusalem. Hellenization crept into the temple service. Jews embraced Hellenistic culture and the worldly things that it had to offer. They assimilated or settled into the system. I want to ask you, how easy has it been to break out of the Hellenistic system? When we started following our Hebraic roots, who was able to deal with the Christmas tree right away? Because you had your whole family. See, our immediate family dealt with that. We were good with it. Just get rid of it. In fact, we did it before we started keeping Shabbat. Shalom. Okay, we dealt with that before, but it was difficult for families to deal with. Why? Because of tradition.
Yes.
We like those warm fuzzies, those traditions that go on with it. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in our schools. It's in the marketplace. It's in our workplaces. You go and you check out at the store, and what are they telling you right now? Merry Christmas. Those are
happy holiday.
happy. Well, yeah, that's because it's become even more secularized. But there are still people that are saying they say happy holidays because they don't want to be offensive.
I said somebody from the church said, Merry Christmas that I run across. I said, Happy Hanukkah. And they went, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
Right? Yeah. Jackie, you're just out there. You're just out there.
Okay.
So now, because of this assimilation process, there's a spiritual battle because for us to be able to move on, we got to deal with those things that cause us to be anchored into a way that says, I don't want to grow. I like this lifestyle. I've been hurt in that lifestyle, so I'm going to stay over here. I'm going to put up a wall. I'm going to put up a barrier. I'm going to put earplugs in. I'm not going to listen unless I want to listen. And only I'll take those things, only what I want to. So Hanukkah is about this real struggle. It was more than just the physical rededication of the temple. It goes into this full out cultural war that goes on. And it's a battle that each one of us faces within our own soul. It's comfortable. Genesis 37:8 says, and his brother said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Dreams.
Aspiration.
Dreams, aspirations. Exactly right. Don't we all have dreams?
Yes.
Joseph's dream gave him a vision for the future. His dreams were prophetic. And then of all things, isn't it kind of weird that he dreamed of harvesting grain? He was a shepherd.
Yeah, but you need the grain to feed the flock.
He's having a dream about grain, but they fed their flocks off of the grass that grew. He was not a farmer, yet he's dreaming about being a farmer.
Prophetic.
Okay? Yeah, there's this prophetic. And do you think that might have also caused some little bit of discomfort among his brothers?
Oh, yeah.
We're shepherds. What are you thinking about raising wheat for? Grain, that type of thing. So, but what else is it telling them in the dream? That if he's dreaming about raising crops, that it's going to upheave everything they've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
It's speaking about a future event that would take place, that grain would be important, more important in their lives, because the way they've been living wasn't available to them any longer.
What's to come?
But in order for him to do that, he would not be able to live in the land where his father was a sojourner. Because this is a prophetic dream. And what did God speak to Abraham about? That your descendants would be
Multiply.
enslaved for 400 years.
Oh, yeah.
Think about that. He was the answer to Abraham's dream or vision or prophetic word. He was the dream. Genesis 15:13 says, then he said to Abraham, know certainly that your descendants will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. So the affliction began at that verse, because 400 years later was the Exodus. So the affliction even began there. Isaac went through affliction. Jacob went through affliction. His descendants now would become from 70, or that went down into Egypt, would now become a mighty nation of people. They're suffering greatly. It intensified year after year after year after year. So think about what Joseph had to do and what he had to be aware of. Did he see that right away from that dream? No. Do you think he saw that? Did he have to wait until the secular king called Pharaoh had to have a dream for him to tie those pieces together and to connect the dots? But he had to go through everything. He had to go through slavery. He had to go through Potiphar's house and then be falsely accused and then thrown into prison and then rise up at the highest that he could be as the jailer's administrator. But he was still in prison. He was not free until the point in time that Pharaoh has the dream. Mm-hmm. Everything was important. It all counted. He was not settled. He almost forgot his identity. In fact, his brothers looked at him and said, we don't know who you are. We don't recognize you. So going on, talking about this, because prophecy can easily be misinterpreted, but it's extremely important when we think about this in Revelation 19:10. For the testimony of Yeshua is the spirit of prophecy. 37:31, the cover-up. They took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of the goats, dipped the tunic in the blood, then they sent the tunic of, it says many colors, And they brought it to their father and said, "We have found this. Do you know whether it's your son's tunic or not?" So what is this idea, this Hebraic thought about dipping of Joseph's tunic in blood? The Jewish thought is that that represents the first step of the exile. The exile would come about because of hatred and disunity among the brothers. The redemption then began when the unified Israel was commanded to dip a bundle of hyssop in the blood of the Passover lamb and touch the lintel and the two doorposts with it. The hyssop symbolizes all of Israel and was dipped into the blood as the key to redemption. Thus, Israel became one with the blood of the Passover lamb. So, they dipped his tunic in blood. There's no hyssop. They're in disunity. Think about that. It's not only the prophecy about going to Egypt, but it's also the prophecy of the northern kingdom being sent out into all the corners of the world, right? It's telling us this disunified Israel would have to be brought back together, and we see that by the blood of the Lamb. How does that connect to Yeshua? At the time of the crucifixion, hyssop was used. Takes of the bitter wine and the wine of judgment from Jeremiah 25:15 is now brought forward to John 19:28. After this, Yeshua, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scriptures might be fulfilled, and said, "I thirst." Now a vessel full of sour wine was sitting there, and they filled a sponge with the sour wine, put it on hyssop, and put it to his mouth. So when Yeshua had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. So hyssop, representing the people of Israel, soaked with divisiveness and sin, which is sour wine, is what Yeshua drank. 1 Corinthians 5:21, for he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of Yah in him. And by the blood of the Passover, we've been saved from our bondage to sin. Think about Egypt. They were brought out of Egypt as the Passover lamb went over. First, in John chapter 1, verse 29, the next day, Yochanan, John, saw Yeshua coming toward him and said, "Behold, the Lamb of Yah who takes away the sin of the world." So this Genesis story of Joseph continues on with the process of unifying the sojourning family. Are we not in the wilderness? Are we not in the field? Is that not where Yeshua went and preached to the multitudes? Was in the field. And now, what's he do? It's because of his resurrection that he can bring us back together. We're all under the blood. He is the hyssop. It is his blood that is on the hyssop. It is what was put on the doorpost is also representing that which is put on our doorposts. If we don't have the blood applied to our doorposts of our heart, guess what? He's not going to pass over. And we need him to pass over. That death, in other words, death will come to us. But in our sojourning, it also means that he is coming back for us. It's restoring us. 2,000 years after the resurrection of Messiah, we need unity. Think about that. How many denominations are out there? How many people have split, even among Hebrew roots?
Many.
Right?
Too many.
Too many. So we have this process. But his return will be a reminder that the division between the brothers is over. Let's look at that. What is it about this garment that was given to the Father that will appear the same in the end? So here we go. We're going to tie it up. Revelations 19:11. Now I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes were like a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. He had a name written that no one knew except himself. Verse 13. He was clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Elohim. And the armies of heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. And now out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should strike the nations, and he himself will rule them with a rod of iron. He himself treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai. He has on his robe and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And what is it about that happens with his return, where his robe is dipped in blood, just like Joseph's robe was dipped in blood? It brings about this new Jerusalem, where all of the names of the tribes are now no longer diversified, no longer scattered among the nations, but the names of the 12 tribes are all together on the gates of Jerusalem. Revelation 21:12. Also, she had a great and high wall with 12 gates, and the 12 angels at the gates, and names written on them, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, and 3 gates on the west. Oh, Bo, Yeshua, Bo. That's all I can say with that. Now, sojourning. What is this? How does all this bring back together? We're sojourners in this land. Think about, do we like the current state of the nation? No. Do we like the state of the economy right now? No. Do we like the state of our own families right now? Probably not. Do we like the upheaval and everything that else is going on? But guess what? These trials, these tribulations, every one of those is because we're sojourners. But the time will come with a new Jerusalem, because the King will come, the one whose blood was dipped in the hyssop is on his way. So that's all I have to say about that. All right, come, Yeshua, come.
Yes.
Bo, Yeshua, Bo. All right, let's pray, and we'll be dismissed. Father, we thank you for the time that we've had here together and to gather here today, because you are good and you are faithful. And so, Father, let us enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
That in spite of the trials, in spite of the tribulations, in spite of the things that we don't like, help us, Father, to walk through them. That in the sunny days we'll be encouraged and strengthened, so that we have strength to hit the rainy days. Because in the storms, that, Father, we find our maturity, that we find our growth, that, Father, we're able to overcome. And we just thank you, Abba, that we can look forward. Let us not nest, but, Father, rather, let us walk in you. In the name of Yeshua.